stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hello, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is finally using the waveform display. In case you're new here, we have been working on a library for real-time audio effects in REAPER for the longest time, and we are going to start using that damn library. I said that before, but this time it's for real. Here's the idea. We worked last time we met, and that was yesterday, on finalizing an effect that shows you the waveform for whatever audio is coming through. For example, something like this. And I think it would be useful to have this kind of effect on the mixer control panel. So it looks like you would see the waveform here. Naturally, this is too big, so first order of business will be to make this smaller so it shows up like this. And I think this is the kind of thing that can be very useful when you are maybe using a compressor and then you put one of these before the compressor, one of these after the compressor, and you see the waveform changing, that sort of thing. So that's what we are going to do. We are going to do this plugin using the library. Of course, this was just a demonstration of all the features in the waveform component that we developed. So this was for demonstration. Now we are going to build something for real, something that is actually useful. I'm going to rename this to demonstration, just like this. I think that effect names are usually not capitalized like that. Let me go to my JS folder. Okay, they are generally capitalized like that. It's just actions are not capitalized like this. Well, whatever. So now this is going to be a real plugin. So let's take more care with the names and the sliders and everything. To begin with, do we want to call it the waveform? I think so. We don't want to have X and Y positions in this case. We also don't want to have width and height in this case. We are going to make these decisions on your behalf. But perhaps you would like to be able to zoom into the waveform and to tell how much time the waveform will display. So I'll have a slider for what I am calling the duration. And Andres is here. Hello. Am I pronouncing your name right, Andres Nieves? I think that's how you pronounce your name. If I'm wrong, then please correct me. Right, so there is the duration in the zoom. I'm gonna call it zoom. Yeah, I think I'm gonna call it zoom. So I'll have a slider for zoom and another for duration. And also oh, perfect, great. Now I have to think about the ranges for this. I think a sensible range may be something like, by default, 2 seconds, and it can go from half a second up to 5 seconds in steps of 0.1 seconds. As for the zoom, I guess it would make sense to zoom out down to half, zoom up down to double in steps of 0.1 again. Okay, and then some of these other fields actually still make sense. So my idea for this plugin is, I guess I didn't really explain how I expect people to use this. Oh, and Bo is here. Hello, Bo. Great to have you here. I hope you enjoyed this ride. So my plan is, you're going to load the plugin, you're going to set some sliders, like these ones and some of these other ones, and then you are going to perhaps right-click and embed this on MCP or TCP, however you prefer to work. MCP will embed the plugin here on the mixer, TCP here on the track control panel. So you do all of that, you set up the plugin the way that you like, and then my plan is that people are going to save this as an effects chain. Perhaps even the default effects chain, if seeing the waveform is something that they always care about. So they will save this as an effects chain, and then they will load the effects chain, perhaps not even opening this effects window, perhaps just by right-clicking here and add effects chain and then waveform, and bam, they will have this. So all this is just for setup and configuration. You probably don't want to touch it too often because the effect is meant to be shown here on the little embedded widget. That's what I'm going for anyway. Okay, so duration and zoom, and there are things like square root, rectified peaks, scroll, and erase on wrap. And I still think that it makes sense to present all these options to the user as sort of extra options maybe. I'll put a space here in between by jumping slide number 2. So I go directly to, jumping slide number 3. So I'll go directly to slider 4. And then there will be a space here on the interface. Yeah, and I think that this looks good. So now let's, oh, hang on. Perhaps let's revisit these labels. Labels are saying true and false. Perhaps they should say yes and no. Yeah, I guess I'll say no and yes. And I think I want different defaults, perhaps. I think that the square root can be useful because it makes the waveform thicker. So I think that the square root is something that I want by default. I don't really like rectified peaks, so I will let 0 be the default here. So rectified will be false. In terms of scrolling, I think that scrolling is better, and erase on wrap doesn't really apply if you're not scrolling. Well, it doesn't really apply if you are scrolling, as we are. But even if you decide not to scroll, I think that erasing on wrap is a terrible idea, and the default should be no. Okay, so moving on, we will want to draw waveforms. We will want to draw multiple waveforms, one per channel. But there are some sources that are mono, and having two copies of the waveform can be annoying. So I guess I will have a third thing here for the number of tracks that you want to display. And I guess I can be here all day. So let me write a real quick program here in JavaScript, new array keys, and then 60, how many? It's not the number of tracks, it's the number of channels. What am I saying? Channels. And we can have up to 64 these days. So yeah, this is gonna work out great. So now this, I missed the 64 one, but whatever. 64, just like that. So it works out perfectly because channels 0 is all channels. And then this channels variable will be just that. Cool. And why am I making this drop-down menu instead of a slider? Because I think it's nicer to interact with a drop-down menu for this kind of thing. I mean, think about how you even select the number of channels on a track with a drop-down menu. So having a slider for that doesn't work super well. That's why I'm listing all the possibilities here, even though it's essentially just a slider, but it's presented as a drop-down. So I'll have this, and then I guess I will skip one. So I will go directly to 3 and 4, and then I'll skip 5, go to 6, 7, 8, and 9. Great. But even if you don't want to store all the channels, I still need to allocate them. So this code can remain, but the sizes perhaps don't make as much sense, because we have a relatively small widget here, so it's no use storing so much. So it's no use having this so big. I'll have this as well. Let me measure how big is this window. It is about 70 pixels, or let's say 80. But that's not Retina, so it's 160. I need to be pessimistic and allocate as much as possible. I just don't want to allocate 700, but 160 seems fine. Let's find a number in our design system. So perhaps 160 is in the design system. I think I will go with 256 because it's a power of 2 and whatnot. So it's a good number. And then the length, the duration that I'm going to store at most is 5 seconds. So I need to store that much. I'll store 5 seconds. Great. Then this still holds. Are there other sliders that I would like to hide and show conditionally? Channels should always be showing, duration and zoom should always be showing. Yeah, this is the only slider that I want to conditionally hide. And then this makes sense as well. Then there is the block thing, and this is us storing into the waveform. And technically, we could be just calling on the number of channels that you want to see. We still need to allocate all the channels. That's because we may want to increase this number later. But over here, we could be saving some work by not pushing into some of the waveform display things. I think I will bite the bullet and do it because it's so simple. So how many channels do I want to iterate over? Well, it is the minimum number between the number of channels and something. I don't want, if you decide to use 64 here, which essentially works the same as all. But if you want to have the number 64 there, and your track is not 64 channels, then I don't want to go over. So I will say that whatever I compute and the minimum between that and the number of channels. So if I have channels, this variable here, if channels is equal to channels all, and what is that? Well, it is a constant that I will initialize here. Channels all is equal to 0. If that's the case, then number of channels, I want to have all of them. Otherwise, channels. And I think that this computation will actually be useful somewhere else when we are drawing. So I think I'm going to extract this into the slider block. And this is the first slider, so I'll compute it right here. Channels. I'll call this the channels slider. And then the number of channels that we want to show is channels slider, and then we do all of this computation. But with the channels slider. Okay, let's review if this makes sense. I am saying that this slider is called channels slider, and then I compute the channels by being the minimum between the number of channels and something. I don't want to go over the number of channels. If the slider is all, I will take the number of channels. Otherwise, I will take this value. And this is the number of channels that we will want to show. So I loop over that. Sounds good. Then over here, I will do this. The background color is working for me. I'm happy with this background color on the TCP. Of course, it works better with the default theme. So maybe if you're using another theme, you will want to tweak this. And in theory, I guess I could have a slider for color, and then you could choose colors of your own, but I will not do that in the interest of keeping things simple. And perhaps the background should be maybe like 800, because this may be too dark. It's kind of standing out. Then we are going to need to loop over all the channels that we want to draw. We will not show the number of frames per second. And then there is a bunch of other test stuff down here that we can remove. We will do the drawing of the waveform inside this loop. Okay, let's see. This is channel. And then we need to look at these variables, but square root comes from the slider. Rectified, scroll, and erase on wrap come from the slider. And now it's time for us to pick our color. I think that maybe blue will be too heavy. I will do instead just the gray. it will be perhaps too dark. I'll do 200, 300. I think that that's going to work. Then for the stroke width of the little indicator, I will do just 2. Is that a number in the design system? I think it is. Or perhaps even 1. Yeah, I think that 1 should be good. And then for the color, I wrote gram instead of gray. And here I will do a gray as well. And I guess 500 will do. It will be slightly darker than the waveform itself, but slightly lighter than the background. This should work. But we still need to compute this, guys. So the width is kind of easy. I will just take the width of the whole screen. As for the height, that's not as easy. I will need to compute it. The height is the height of the window divided by the height, or divided by the number of channels that I'm about to draw. So that's the height. The X is easy. That's 0. I'm pinning this to the left. But then the Y is going to start at 0. But it is going to be incrementing. So I guess it's going to start at minus height and be incrementing like this. I think that this should do it. Let's test. Okay, weird things are happening. This is weird. But let's put this on the mixer control panel. Maybe it's gonna work there. Okay, it is working here. Why is the bottom one flickering? I don't know. But it's showing something. If I want to show just one channel, that works a lot better. If I make the duration bigger, longer or shorter, I still have not implemented that. And I have not implemented the zoom either. But everything else I have implemented. It's still a bit of a mystery to me why it restarts when I change a slider. Don't really know. Yeah, this is looking pretty much like what I had in my head when I was writing this. What if I erase on wrap? What is that going to look like? And perhaps 5 seconds is maybe too much. Okay, that works. Erase on wrap. Scrolling should also be looking okay. Yeah, this is pretty acceptable. It's flickering a little, it's glitching here and there, but I guess this is the nature of JS effects. There isn't much I can do. And when this is showing up here, it doesn't look too good because it's not meant to be this big. So the values here are super, super blown out in your face. So I guess I'm going to commit what I have, and I'm going to look into something that we have not touched on in our coding sessions. We have talked about this with Justin Johnson when we had him over, but we never used this that I'm about to use. So there are some special variables, and one of these special variables is indicating whether we are in the mixer control panel. Yep, so it's this. The low bit 1, will be set if this JS effect is embedded in the TCP MCP. This is a bit manipulation, and I don't really like this kind of thing. So instead, I will throw this in the GFX part of the library. This is something that is called when you're using the library. So this is a place where I can set a better name for this. Is in, how do they call embedded? Yeah, embedded. Is embedded in TCP MCP. No, I want a bitwise end because I'm using a mask here to just get that first bit. Yeah, this will do. So now we have this variable that we can look, and that means that we can do something completely different. So if it is embedded in the MCP TCP, then draw as usual. But if it's not, then do something else. This something else will be to print some instructions to the user. And it doesn't have to be so small. It doesn't have to be bold. It doesn't need any letter spacing. It can align to the left. It can align to the top. The overflow needs to be visible. I will use a gray warm of 200. And the space here doesn't really matter because I'm not doing any kind of alignment. Let's see if this shows up. Okay, so here we are showing the instructions. And then if we put this on the MCP, then it's showing the waveform in that glitchy manner that we need to fix. But it is showing different things when you are on this mode versus that one. Great. So now let's write the instructions. And maybe putting this on the top left it's too top lefty. So I'll give it a space of 2. Use the sliders above. Well, no. Right click the effects and show embedded UI in MCP TCP. Show embedded UI in TCP MCP. I guess I will give both options for people who are new to this. They may not really know what's going on. So right click on the effects and enable either, you cannot enable both. Customize with the sliders above. Customize the display with the sliders above. And how is it called? Yeah, effects chain with lowercase c. Save as an effects chain. Okay, I think that this will do. Instructions. Okay. Doesn't have to be so large, but okay, I will have it. I'll have it this way. And perhaps to help you configure this, it would be nice for me to show the whole thing, even in this mode, but show it a little bit smaller. So that's what we are going to do next. So I guess I'm going to first check if I am not embedded, then print the instructions. Then I will compute this height and y and whatnot. I will compute these variables differently depending on whether I am embedded or not. I guess I'm going to take all of this out. Like this. So this is the case when I'm embedded. The width will also need to be set here because it will be different. So and even the X position will have to be set here. So the X is this. The Y is that. Well, the Y depends on the height, so I'll have the height be computed first. Yeah, and now let's look at what we need to do when we are not embedded in the TCP MCP. Well, the width will be, I guess, 256. So 256 was what? What is it? That's space 32. So, and the height will be space 32 divided by the number of channels. The X can be this, and the initial Y can be how much do you think that this all is going to take? Maybe like 10, something like that. And then this will now show things. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, it is 10 is not enough. Let's go to maybe 20. Okay, and it would be nice to draw like a different background color maybe, or some sort of square to show that this is the area that we are drawing in. I guess I will draw a rectangle that is not filled in. Doesn't really matter all that much, but that's what I will do. So if I am not embedded, I will print these instructions. But if I am not embedded, I will also draw a rectangle. I'm pondering where I should do this. Probably here at this point, because that's where I have the X, Y, width, and height. So I will GFX rect. But that's going to fill in. If I don't want to fill in, do I have an option for that? No. Interesting. Well, I guess I can use, yeah, I think I will do that. I guess I can use the rounded corners version, because that one doesn't fill in, and I do like rounded corners, so. X and Y, width and height. Oh, hang on. No, this should be the height not of one of the waveforms, but all of them. So I'll not divide by the number of channels here. Oh, and then this Y is not the same. So I'll have the width and height, but I will also have the width and height total. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it is what it is. So height, how do I call this? Waveform. Yeah, that's what I will do. Okay, let's review this. We have the width and height of the whole component, as well as the height of the waveform. And then let's review everywhere where we are using height. Here we want the height of the whole component, and here of each one of the waveforms. Okay, that seems right. And then let's look at radius in the design system, because we want a value that works here. I will do small border radius. And let's check what this looks like. Clearly, this is not drawing a border around that, but it is having the effect that I wanted. Oh, I guess I will have to change this meaning of y. And I will have to update y at the end. That should do. Hey, there you go. Probably this is not enough, so let's see if this is good. And there you go. That's what I had in mind. This is just way too big, so I will change this to be even numbers on the design system. We do have width on the design system, don't we? Yeah, but they are all very large. Even small is 768, which is larger than what we have already. So I'll use space instead. And 600 is about right, but I want it to be smaller, so I'll go with 512. And then this will be too long. This line of instructions will be too long, so I'll do this. And the height is still way too large. Also, things are not showing right. Even now, if I have just one channel, is my voice glitching on the stream? Because it seems like my computer is having a hard time drawing all of this. Weird. So this space is not enough, and this space is way too much. So let's go back to the design system and find some good spacing in there. The width, I think I'm happy with, but I think we can go one down. So 480. Maybe 480 is not going to be enough. Let's go to 448. And then for the height, I think we can go to like 320. But here we'll need to go up. We'll need to go up from 24 to, let's say, 32. Okay, this still seems to be too large, but now I don't think it's even respecting my number. Let's see, let's do a drastically lower number. Yep, it's not respecting my number, which is okay. Sometimes Reaper needs more space to do its own interface, so it doesn't respect that number. So maybe 448 is not even a good number. Let's hope that it is. And what is below 320 on the design system? Because I think that Reaper is using my height. Let's do 200 just to check. Yeah, it is doing my height. So we might as well pick a good one. 320 was a bit large. Maybe 256. That's Oh, you see, we are because we are using the design system for everything in terms of like spacing and everything. Check this out. You can see the border of the rectangle over here, so we are exactly touching that. So if we want to make this space below the same as the space above, we just need to add 2 to this. So what is 256 in the design system? That's space 32. So let's go with space 36, which is 288. That will be just right. And it is good spacing here, good spacing there. And as we change this, we should see the reflection here, and we do. And because this is a bit bigger than the real one, when we put it on the MCP, it's slightly smaller. It's slightly smaller than that. You can sort of see some glitches down below that don't really exist or that are not really visible when you put the effect back there. So I think I am going to make this a bit smaller. I'm gonna go from 32 to like 28, or maybe even 24. Now I think it's okay. Oh, glitching. It has glitched already in a non-recoverable way. Now it's back to being okay. And I do like this. Yeah, I think it does that thing more justice. Let's measure. About 85. About 98. So it's in the ballpark. It's good enough. And then we have to reposition everything because now it's smaller. So I think it can go up a bit. Let's do 28. And that means that the whole window can be smaller. Let's go back to 256. Okay, that's as much time as I'm going to give this. It looks good. Instructions, right click on the effects and enable, or maybe go up here to plus. Yeah. So I'll change this. Click on the plus, the Reaper interface above, and enable either black or black. Customize the display with the sliders above. Save as an effects chain. Okay, so everything is working. If I want all the channels, it's showing all the channels. If I want just one, it's showing just one. If I want 12, it's not going to show 12 because my track is not 12 channels. But if I make it perhaps 4 channels, then it is showing 4 waveforms. Oh, it's going to glitch now. Great. At least the stream doesn't seem to be affected. I'm still getting meters on my microphone and everything, but Reaper seems to be going into a crash right now. Yikes. Yeah, Guess there is no way back. My plugin crashed Reaper. I wonder why that is. Is there some terrible performance issue going on? Is it because my effect is too slow? It shouldn't be. My effect is only taking 0.1% CPU, which is very respectable for all the shenanigans we are pulling. We are using real objects as opposed to pseudo objects. So I don't really understand. Well, in theory, this thing is working, so I'll be happy with that. We do need to take care of this blinking of the image below, which seems to be accompanied by a line sometimes. And I think that by default, printing just one waveform makes more sense, so I'll change the default. I guess the defaults tend to be my preset, Leandro's preset. I would like to see a single waveform, so that's the default. It's also faster, so it gives a good first impression. See, now the CPU is down to 0.0%. It's not taking any CPU at all. And maybe the square root isn't so good after all. I don't know. This waveform is at -18 and it barely shows up here, so I guess the square root is good. You know what? How about we put a tone generator to have better control of the loudness? I'll mute the master here just in case. There is no output, but still, you never know. So if we go up to zero, it's going to get to zero right there. And if we want like -18 to show up as something sizable on the waveform, then the square root is a good idea. Okay, that's what we are going to have. We are going to have a square root on. Then not rectified and scrolling, just like that. We still have to take care of the zooming and we have to take care of the duration. And perhaps we would have some sort of grid as well. Similar to the oscilloscope meter, we have this grid behind showing the dBs and stuff. I'll leave this as a slider. It will be slider 11 and it will be grid. That's how REAQ calls it, show grid. I'll call it grid as well. By default it will be on and the options are hide and show. But unfortunately, we don't have the grid yet. And now that I think about it, the duration and the zoom need facilities that we don't currently have on the waveform display. On the component. The library needs to be extended to support this. So yeah, let's see. I'll leave myself some to-dos. duration, zoom, and grid. Yesterday, when I said that I finished the waveform component, I latched on the list of things to do zooming, because I thought that I was not going to need it for this component, but as it turns out, I think I do need it, so I'll have to address this. And I will do it in this order: zoom, then duration, and then grid. Or perhaps I will not call it zoom. Perhaps I should call it like the dB, the top dB that you want to see. Right now I'm showing up to 0. I could be showing more than that. And for that, I will also need to extend the waveform display. Oh, damn it. The first thing I do, the simplest thing that can exist, which is just this, I still cannot pull off with the library. I'll need to extend it. Oh boy. But anyway, I think it looks good. It's smooth. It is showing the waveform in a nice way, and at least I like what I see. It's just that I want to have the best waveform component. Maybe having an option to make this vertical would also be nice. And that's a big one. Oh boy, that's complicated. Because it sort of makes sense. You can think of this channel strip as going up and then down. So it could be nice to see this. Yeah, the waveform would be scrolling from top to the bottom. I don't know, that's going to be so complicated. We will have to touch so many parts of the code. I will not have that feature. And I'm not sure I love the question marks. But whatever, I'll do it this way. Okay, so there you have it. We made progress. We started using the library. We have one tentative effect. It's kind of already very usable, just like this. I mean, I would start using this as it is. I kind of like it. But there are things we need to fix, like this glitching here is not too happy. It's not making me happy. So I guess first thing is investigate the glitch when there are two waveforms being displayed. Oh, Pedro is here. Hello. Great to have you here. Why not make use of spectral color? That's a fair question. That's a good question. So let me show what Pedro means for people who don't know what spectral peaks are all about. Let me find a song. So this is the song you heard in the beginning of the stream, and it's coloring the waveform based on the notes that are happening. Unfortunately, from JS effects, we don't have a way of accessing this information. So we would need to compute that in real time, which is expensive from a computational perspective. You have to take, you have to do an algorithm on the audio coming in. It's not the end of the world. It's not terribly difficult. We will do a similar algorithm in the future for other reasons, but we currently don't have that. So I guess I will just add this as a potential feature in the future. But I will not do it right now because it is complicated to do this in real time and make it fast and make it reliable. So spectral peaks here on this view would be super nice, but we won't have them now. And it seems like it's just the bottom one that is glitching. Now I wonder what happens if I turn my voice off, so nothing is showing, and I start playing the song. Because the song is stereo. Yeah, versicle is already something that I put on the list of things to do. But I took it out. Okay, I'll put it in again. Like versicle could be okay. And I think I may have a clue as to why this is happening. And it has to do with performance. So you see how sometimes it resets just like that? I think that that's happening because the processing on my plugin is taking so many resources. That's, yeah, I think that's what's happening. My plugin is taking so many resources that sometimes it doesn't run fast enough, and then the plugin thinks that it's not even showing. So yeah, we have this whole thing. Okay, I will start making sense now. We have this whole thing to detect whether the GFX block is running. That's the thing that is drawing, which is important because sometimes I don't have my effects showing up on the screen. So I don't want to be taking resources in that case. So I have this whole thing. And the way that this is implemented, the way that this check works is by looking at the relative timings of the audio thread and the user interface thread. And it gets complicated, these relative times and everything. And it seems like when you are on the MCP, these relative times are not working super well, particularly when you have a higher number of channels. When the number of channels is just one, it's not glitching, it doesn't seem. And the user interface is not glitching even. Because it was even glitching, the REAPER user interface was becoming slow because of my plugin. But that's okay, that's no longer happening. And when I do 2 channels, yeah, then it starts to happen. You see it's resetting because it is taking so long that the plugin thinks it's not even running anymore because it's dropping so many frames. This was not as successful as I wanted it to be. You can check Lua from Harrison Mixbus. They have that implemented. Lua from Harrison Mixbus? I know what Harrison Mixbus is. But what is Lua from Harrison Mixbus? Is that a... What's that? I don't know what that is. I will check it out though. They have that implemented. A inline scope and an inline spectrogram. Ah, okay, so there is a way for it to script stuff in Lua too. Okay, it's the name of the programming language then. Okay, that makes sense. And then in Lua, you can do these kinds of widgets. That's nice. I don't think you can do widgets in Lua for here. You can do widgets in Lua. You can do stuff in Lua that will show up in the user interface, just not right there, I don't think. But I will check what Harrison Mixbus is doing in terms of these displays. All right, so that's all I have time for right now. We started doing a new plugin using the library. It's looking okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. And yeah, in our case, we are required to use GS effects for that. Yeah. All right. Next time on Monday, I will continue working on this, finding the glitchiness, maybe doing the zoom, definitely not doing spectral peaks, but it could be fun. in the future. So have a great weekend. Thank you, Bo and Pedro and Andres and everyone else who may be watching now or in the future. Have a great weekend. I see you on Monday. Bye.
Thank you for watching the stream, you know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all will be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.